Hey guys, I want to welcome you to the weekly Wednesday for the Financial Freedom newsletter, where every week, every Wednesday, we delve into something inspirational, motivational, something excerpt taken from the Financial Freedom weekly newsletter. Wherever you are, if you're listening on Spotify, on iTunes, Google, be sure to click the like, subscribe, share, comment. And without ado, let's get into the show. Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. As you know, I'm always in the field for the top talent, people doing things on the cutting edge, thinking differently, mindset, awesome health, relationship, business, finances. And so today I'm happy to welcome Deb Curtis, and she's going to talk to us all about breaking free of limitations, barriers, unleashing your potential. And I'm happy to welcome Deb to the show. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Chris. I'm very happy to be here on this great day as we're at the time of this episode approaching summertime. So lots of picnics and fun happening out there.
Yeah, I love that. So we were talking backstage. We connected through Podmatch. Tell people how you got started, your backstory, and what you do now.
Yeah, thank you. And my backstory is about 30 years of working in corporate America. I know, that's a big backstory. Wouldn't you agree? 30 years, my gosh. And to all of your listeners, you may think that seems like forever, and it's not. It goes by really fast. So my first word of advice is make the best of your first 10 and take action on what your goals are, because before you know it, that third decade, that 30th year will happen, and you'll look back saying, well, wait a minute, I didn't get that done, or I forgot to do this. So there's my first plug-in for inspiration. 30 years goes quick, so jump on what your heart is telling you. My story, I came from just a troubled background, child abandonment at age 9 from my mom, long court battle over 2 years, and at age 11, my dad, he won custody of me. My dad and I lived very frugal. He worked 2 jobs. I had 2 other sisters, and he still had to pay child support and alimony to my biological mom. We lived in a very small, tiny apartment, but close to my high school as I was getting older, and my middle school. So I could walk to school, thank goodness. So he never really had to worry about, busing or dropping off or picking me up. So I was always looking to find love, even in school. So I just joined a lot of communities and was a very busy girl, just trying to find my way and rise above the hurt that I was going through in my family life. And then as I got older, I was still looking for love in all the wrong places. And my first marriage was an alcoholic, which I didn't know until the first year of our marriage. That turned into a domestic abuse situation. And my life was threatened 3 times, and he was placed in jail twice. I'm the one that bailed him out. And through all of that, I didn't want anyone to know what was going on in my life, because my very first corporate job of 30 years was in motion. And when I say that, did not have a college education because my dad couldn't afford it. And I had to prove myself back in those days, Chris, that I can do the job without a college education, because it was hard someone to land a nice career without college education on the resume. So I had to build my way up. And I did while I was married to that destructive man who's no longer with us. He passed away from his habits. And I kept a smile on my face and was a top performer for my first 18 years on my very first job in the 90s. Back then, corporate, different than what it is today. And my dad always taught me be loyal to corporate back then, because the benefits and just they would take care of you was his message. And you may know this story, Chris, but that's the way it was. If you worked somewhere for 15, 20 years, you felt safe. You felt like you weren't going to lose your job, because loyalty back then meant more than push, more sales, top performer. It was loyalty and just being your average employee. But I always wanted to rise above. And during that 18 years, I wanted to get promoted to a branch manager, but I didn't have that college education on my resume. However, I proved to my supervisors that I can do the job without the college education. I had fire in the belly, and I learned how to do the position without an education. And I was surpassing the men, because it was a very male-dominated industry. I was surpassing their numbers without that college education, but they still wouldn't promote me. And it was because I didn't have that education. And they told me back then, which they could, because it wasn't as focused as it is today, being a woman, they did not want to promote a woman into the branch manager position. Well, I remained positively persistent and kept showing them that you're making a mistake here. I have a right to be a manager. I'm surpassing everybody. They put me on a probationary period to, quote unquote, try out the branch manager position without any kind of pay increase of any sort. Well, that was a 6-month probationary period, and I knocked it out of the park. You tell someone that had a rough life and overcame adversity from abandonment, domestic abuse. I might not have had an education on my resume, but I'll tell you what, I had a lot of experience of overcoming adversity, and I could make anything happen, and I would show them that I can do this position. They promoted me, the 6 months surpassed. Then I was officially the first female branch manager of this finance company, and I paved the path for other women. I knew, they did tell me though, that they could not pay me equally to the men that had the education on their resume. It was very public, and you just accepted it, and I accepted it. So Chris, what was important to me was having that promotion on my resume, because that was my ticket, so I thought, to continue to climb the corporate ladder into other positions with banks and business banking and SBA lending. I still found a crutch in the 2000s, the early 2000s, trying to find a position that would earn me more income without that college education, no matter how much my resume was on fire as a top performer. That 30 years just continued to be a crutch for me as a woman and a top performer that didn't have a college education. And I worked in a very male-dominated industry. Business banking, SBA lending is very driven, a lot in corporate by white men, just because traditionally white men in America have always been the breadwinner. It is what it is. That's how we grew up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. The mom stayed home. But fast forward all these decades, times have changed. And we're still struggling to create unity and diversity, that men and women are equal and can do the position. And I would much rather hire somebody with fire in the belly that knows the job and will get the job done versus somebody that's, laid back and doesn't really want to work hard, but has a college education. So that was the start of my career, which through the last 10 years, I was an SBA lender focusing primarily on change of business ownership finance transactions. And I'm speaking a little bit slower because I don't believe we as a country do a good enough job educating our communities in general that you can become a business owner of an established money-making business. There are over 11,000 baby boomers today, per day, that are retiring because we're all living longer. So 11,000 baby boomers per day are retiring. And out of those 11,000, many of those baby boomers, Chris, own small businesses, and they're established for 20, 30 years, and they're making money pretty much older marketing principles, because these baby boomers, they don't want to futz with a website or social media marketing, right? So they're profitable with old ways of thinking, and God bless them, because they are profitable. And if somebody new and younger like you steps in to finance this business, think of what you can do to create efficiencies with technology and a website and social media, without really disturbing the operations as is. Just a little bit of tweaking can bring much more presence and revenue. So after 10 years of doing that, what did I notice a trend of the last 30 years? The typical applicant to purchase finance an established money-making business is a white male corporate employee. The same trend is happening today as it happened with me 30 years of working in corporate. So now I'm outside of corporate and I am, helping individuals. I practice diversity, unity and diversity. I'll help men, I'll help women, I'll help people of color. I'll help anybody become a business owner through these transactions. But by golly, I have a passion and a heart to teach and mentor women and all of our minorities in this country. How do you become qualified to be a small business owner of these profitable companies? We have to. We have to level the playing field. So that's my passion today, and it will continue until the day I'm called home, because I have 3 daughters and grandchildren, and I want them to grow up in a country that has unity and diversity and an equal playing field for all. And there's my story.
Wow. Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, you touch on so much. Like I said, you're an innovator, you're a disruptor. Like I said, you're talking about marginal, equal opportunity. You're talking about all the frustrations with, just a big centralized bureaucracy. But I love this idea, and you talk about this idea of everybody's running scared, but the greatest opportunity is now, because you have all technology, you have or AI, blockchain, you have millennials, Gen Z, and then you have retiring, baby boomers, and it's going to be this huge, massive wealth transfer, just massive, just like trillions of dollars, so like I said, you're at the forefront and you're advocating for marginalized communities, which is really interesting. So we can talk about. So I love your ideas where you have this over idea. You have silver lining, conciliation against chaos, and the half century towards forgiveness. And I love that. Expand upon that.
Whew. Forgiveness, expand upon forgiveness. Is that what you're looking for? Personally, I've had to learn how to forgive, and I'll just expand upon that first and foremost. When I was abandoned as a young child, as you heard earlier, it was my biological mom. My parents got divorced when I was age 9, and part of the reason why my dad left her, because she was adopted, didn't really have a family, but made wrong choices and was into drugs, and Valium was the drug of choice back then. I think it was a painkiller, and she was involved in drinking and alcohol and was real threatening to me. I was the youngest of 3 daughters. My other 2 sisters, they were already gone out of the house. And she would have parties at the home. It turned into a drug home. Neighbors would call the police, and eventually she had to get out of that house, go do her partying elsewhere, but she would leave me behind. And little by little, she would stretch it. She'd, leave for a few days, leaving me behind at, 9, 10 years old. And I just figured out how to walk to school and go have dinner with my friends at their home. Eventually, over time, her 1 week turned into a month. And then she kept stretching it longer and longer. But I was threatened by her not to say anything to my family or anybody. And it's kind of the same story of what I did with my first marriage, because she threatened me not to say anything. My first marriage to the alcoholic, he threatened me to kill me if I said something. So, gosh, now, you're almost making me have a revelation here. It's like I was always taught to not say anything. And I'll get back to that. But I eventually had to forgive my mom, COVID of 2020. She never was a part of my life. After my dad won custody, never attended school events, never attended my first marriage, second marriage, nothing. She just was so upset at me. She just abandoned me for 40 years of my life. And then when March of 2020 came, reached out to me. She was living in an efficiency 1-bedroom, another drug house, but this time she was 76 years old, and she's not partying anymore, because Lord, I hope you're not partying still at 76 years of age. But she was in complete fear of the home she was staying in, because people were dying from drug overdoses, and now this pandemic was happening. So I had to go rescue her and move her home with my family after a 40-year absence. And forgiveness was taught. I could not forgive her for 40 years, but when I brought her back to my home, I had to forgive her and help turn her around. And 6 months later, we moved her into a senior apartment facility across town from us. It's clean. It's a beautiful place. We take her shopping. We get her groceries. We take her to her appointments. She comes to our home. She visits my grandchildren. So we're reunited, and the message here is forgiveness. But back to my aha moment that you created on this show was me trying to hide everything throughout my whole life that, and I think a lot of us do that. We try to present this picture that everything is okay, but it's not okay. And I hid it. And so now today, because of my challenges personally and professionally and hiding everything, that everything is fine, I want to be a voice of reason for you and others that need help, whether it be to exit corporate and purchase finance a business, or who knows, maybe my story may touch somebody and I can help point them in the right direction if it's domestic abuse or abandonment or something like that. Now I'm not hiding anything, which is ironic, because I don't want anyone to ever go through what I did for 30, 40 years of hiding everything. So I'm your voice of reason to help you get it out in public. And just you having me as a guest, Chris, is part of my healing journey, if I may say. So thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. I love this. How can people contact you, follow you? You're doing amazing work. Reach out to you.
Yes. My website is debcurtis.com. It's as easy as that. And you're welcome to email me, which is deb@debcurtis. And all my social channels are on my website. And that's as easy as it gets. I knew I had to make it easy. It couldn't be difficult to get in touch with me.
Yeah. For all the audience out there, let's thank Deb for coming out to the show. Really amazing stories. All of her resources will be in the links and show notes. And with that, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.
I hope you really enjoyed that wonderful, inspirational, motivational piece. Again, wherever you are listening, if you liked it, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. We're on everywhere: Spotify, iTunes, Google, Amazon, Audible. And without much ado, be sure to thank this show's sponsors, and we'll see you next week.